Hi, everybody. Welcome to Life Made Easier podcast. You'll find here ancient wisdom with a modern approach. My name is Dr. Tiffany Hunter, and I'm an energy healer in the United States. In each episode, we're going to be sharing useful information about the world of energy healing to help you develop and enhance your energy intelligence to help you can make your life easier in simple and practical ways.
And I'm Dr. Karen Janes, psychologist and energy healer in the UK. And in today's episode, we're going to tell you a little bit about what energy healing is. And we'd also like to talk about kind of why you might find it a helpful addition to your life as part of looking after your health and well-being. So, Tiffany, I'm really curious to hear how close this is to how I describe it to people. I'd love to hear how you with a new client who walks in the door and maybe hasn't had any energy healing before, or certainly not with you. How would you begin that conversation talking to them?
Oh, goodness. You know what? So much of that depends on the context. And it's at its most, I want to say most basic or most general, I'll ask somebody if they have heard of acupuncture because the vast population of people have. And if they say yes, I'll say I do something similar to acupuncture, but with no needles because I'm moving the frequencies and the energy through the body, but I'm doing that with my hands, not with the needles. I always find people's responses to that very funny and enlightening because so many people don't think of acupuncture as an energy healing modality. That I don't know. I don't know if they think that there's medicine in the metal or something, but they don't realize that it's the energy frequency and the flow of energy that's being moved through the body that creates the result. So that's where I'm starting if I'm talking to somebody and we're really far away from them having any experience of what I do. I also will have also said that I work with the energy anatomy of the body, the energy anatomy and the systems and the organs to optimize them to be getting best results. And I'll say to somebody that a little like where you throw a ball, where you're looking is where your hand directs the ball, right? So if you're looking in a direction, your hand follows. Because the energetics is anatomy is underneath everything, where the energy is pointed optimal, balanced, clear, and flowing, that's where everything else goes. All symptoms show up in the energy and the emotion. All symptoms show up in the mind and the emotions and the body, but the cause for those things are often in the energy system underneath it. So again, like where you set the energetic anatomy, everything else follows and you get the results that you want. And I also will talk sometimes about removing blocks or removing obstacles to health. And sometimes those blocks are mechanical, right? Cogs aren't working the way they need to be working. And sometimes they're based on past history, like trauma and things like that. Okay, now you have to tell me what you say.
So definitely some overlap, but I think things like this always show up how much overlap there is in the way we see energy, but how we tend to describe things in different ways.
Mm.
So I will often talk to people about, and sometimes I even kind of make a bit of a joke. I don't know how much science you remember from school, but basic physics tells us that everything in the world is made of energy. And I probably don't remember an awful lot more about basic science from school. But that bit I think is a useful thing to know, and I'll sometimes gesture to like the desk in the room or a chair in the room or something and say, this is a really solid form of energy, and the water in the glasses that we have here is a less solid form of energy but still very tangible. And we know that something like air, the air we breathe, I don't know anybody who doesn't, who doubts the existence of that. I guess we can feel kind of breeze against our faces and stuff, but it's not tangible in the same way that water or a liquid or a physical thing is tangible. And so I think that kind of can sometimes just help give us a bit of a framework for, and then if we take a step beyond that, there are energies in the world that don't quite fall into that, solid matter liquid or gas category kind of thing. We're talking about something else, which is, an energy that exists in the world. And there's lots of energies that exist in the world, and some of them are useful for healing. So some we can think of energy as having a bit of a vibration, much like sound does, or colors do. Light, they have different frequencies of light that makes us then learn to identify that particular frequency of light or combination of frequencies we call red, or we call blue, or we call yellow, or we call green, or whatever. And so healing energy has different vibrations. So there are different types of energies that we can work with. A bit like you, I often use chi, the energy that's used in acupuncture, but also a Tai Chi class, as an example of one that commonly, if people have heard of any, they may well have heard of that one.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then I think the other thing that I often say to people is, essentially, when we're doing energy healing, I'm going to be working with them to probably do at least some, if not all, of three things. This is a bit of a nutshell description, but it covers most bases, I think. One is to make more energy available to your body, for your body to take in, to use, to make use of. And that's where we were talking about other vibrations of energy existing in the world around us. Then we will also, a bit like you were saying about the blocks, I will support people to release out any energy that's stored in their system that isn't helpful to them. Useful to keep in mind that they are in control of that process. It's not like a surgical removal of parts of your anatomy that you don't have a say about. So releasing those kind of blockages is completely, in the person, the client that is in charge of that. And then the last bit, the third part, is about helping to kind of rebalance and fine tune, if you like, your energy system so that it can work as efficiently as possible. And it's not unlike, we might go and get our car service and then it just runs a bit more efficiently, or our wheels balanced on the car so that they're not kind of wobbling along and they're not using up extra fuel or wearing unevenly. Also, going to see a chiropractor, you have your skeleton put back in alignment. And although it can sometimes feel a little bit weird to start with, it's ultimately more comfortable. So trying to get your energy system working as efficiently as is possible within that session, that might be something you can, build on and get even better over time. Maybe it's not something you can completely have be close to perfect in one go. And then, like the chiropractor, there we have to take into account things that might potential limitations. We are human and we have lived and had experiences and had things impact on us, and have genetics and all of those things. So yeah, I think that's where I tend to go with initial kind of explanations about what energy healing is.
I like that. I feel like I'm going to write notes for next time I have to explain it. I'm also super curious what kind of questions you usually get from new clients. One of the ones I thought of when you were talking was, where do I use my own energy when I'm working on somebody?
Right.
I get that a
Yeah.
lot from new clients. Yeah. And
Hmm.
I have to explain, absolutely not. That would be like putting diesel engine through a gasoline car. I mean, diesel through a gasoline car. You don't want my energy. You want your energy. You just want more of it and a better version of it.
I
Do you
think
get that?
the UK version of that is, does it drain you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People are
Yeah.
often very, very kindly concerned that I might be depleted, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of the same question, I think. Is it your energy? I
Yeah.
think the one that I get asked maybe most often is, can you pick up things? Can you tell
Yes.
things?
What'd you
Will you
get?
be able?
What'd you get?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes that question, I mean, commonly comes at the end, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes comes at the beginning as well, for people curious to know, um, kind of what will I be able to tell them often? I think, you're coming to a healer presumably because you want some kind of help, even if it's just, I'd like to just feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more relaxed. So yeah, what will you be able to tell me about myself? I think is often a question there that comes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think particularly because the field that we're in is not really well understood by most people. And
Yeah.
so I think clients have this experience that we have the set of information that really they don't have much framework for,
Mm,
right? And so I think there's a curiosity on how far that insight extends, right? So you know things about my energy that I can't even track what you're talking about, and I have no framework for it. Do you also know about my secrets, right? Like
yeah.
how far does this extend? And of course, the answer is absolutely not. I don't know your secrets. I can tell
Yeah.
you your aura. I cannot tell you what the secrets you're
Yeah.
hiding from
I,
yourself.
I, yeah. And I
That's
think
the fear.
people are, any of us, when we go to see a new practitioner for anything, there's often an element of kind of nervousness or just curiosity or a little bit of uncertainty, or how is this going to go? Will it
Mhm.
be uncomfortable in some way? What's going to happen? And if it, particularly if it's something where there might be some more emotional stuff going on, understandably we might have a little bit of anxiety about what might come up, how might I feel, what might I discover about myself, what might this person tell me. And I think you're absolutely right. I often, I mean, it's true, but I often say it as a kind of a little bit of a joke of, I can't read your mind. And I kind of can say it as a joke sometimes, but I'm in all earnestness. I think it's important that we reassure people that we're not, spying on them. We're not going into their minds and digging through their deepest, darkest thoughts. Equally, there's often, I'm often struck by people. We can carry so much shame and embarrassment about things we feel, and because we tend to not be great at always, as cultures. I know you and I come from two, similar and somewhat different cultures, but I think probably in both our cultures, we're not always great about people just talking about their more kind of difficult thoughts and feelings with each other. So people will, quite often when they might share something with me and feel like it's going to be this really shocking thing, or they're weird, or they should be embarrassed or ashamed of having that thought or that feeling or doing that behavior. And 99.9% of the time, it from my point of view, it's like, oh yeah, you're human.
Yeah.
And it's a privileged position to be in, because we know that that happens because people come and tell us. But if you're not having those conversations with your friends or your family or your colleagues, you don't know that other people are thinking similarly, weird and wonderful things.
Hmm.
And there's so much that I think is just being a human.
Hmm.
These things that are just natural things for us to experience or think, that
So true.
yeah. So I think sometimes there's that worry, which for us, just, especially once you've been doing this kind of work for a very long time, and we both come from backgrounds as psychologists, so we've spent a lot of time talking to people and listening to people in, clinical settings or research settings, kind of hearing about their innermost thoughts. So it's hard to shock us.
Yes. Yeah. I think all humans are more revealing than we like to think of ourselves as. I think it was C.S. Lewis actually who said that you can sit in front of any stranger for 10 minutes and often know more about them than they know about themselves, right?
Mm.
Because I think we reveal more in how we carry ourselves and how we talk in the language that we choose. I think we reveal more than we think we do to people. Um, and I say that because that's the other thing I see with new people walking in the door is their fear that they're revealing something that I'm gonna know something about them that they don't want to be revealed. And I think in that way, there's similar concerns that people have about therapists, right? That
Mm.
they're going to sit in front of them and they're going to come to we're going to come to some conclusions about them or their relationships or something like that. And I think aside from just people reveal stuff, and I think we reveal things more than we really intend to sometimes, or even of aware that we're doing it. Aside from that, I found that people are sometimes surprised. I'll give you a story that's in my head. I had a colleague refer me one of his clients, and afterwards, he gave me the feedback that when the client saw him, he said about me that, I enjoyed the experience and I felt so much better, but I was disappointed that she asked me a bunch of questions about what this person was going through, what their symptoms were, and what their diagnoses were. I felt like she should have just known.
Right.
Like I should have been able to read the energy. And it is, I hope, probably reassuring to people that we absolutely can't do that. And I don't know, give me 6 hours and I might have been able to, but it's a little like showing up in front of a doctor and saying, so you tell me what's wrong with me. I'm like, okay, well, give me some time and I can trawl through the haystack to try to find the needle, or you can just let me know that you're having trouble sleeping. Like,
Gives you a
yeah.
good place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give me a place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I wonder if it's helpful for us to just talk about, I mean, there may be people listening to this who have had experiences of energy healing, and obviously they can vary from practitioner to practitioner, but I wonder if it might actually be helpful just to talk a little bit about what happens in the room.
Mm.
What might I, if I'm going to go and see somebody for some energy healing, what might I expect to happen? And we can do energy work, and it again varies from practitioner to practitioner, and sometimes varies according to the problem the person has as to whether we physically touch our clients or not. That touching should be done in a way that feels very consensual and in areas of the body that feel comfortable and safe. But we can also do energy healing just a little bit above the body, so a bit away
Mhm.
from the body. So generally, it's possible to do most things without any physical contact if that is more comfortable. And I think it's also okay to have that conversation and ask if you're
Mhm.
concerned about that. I mean, hopefully that's something that the practitioner will kind of negotiate with you in a way that feels comfortable. But generally, we encourage our clients to either sit or lay down. Most commonly, laying down on a couch, but sometimes sitting if laying down isn't convenient or comfortable. And partly,
Couch for you, massage table for me.
right, okay, healing
Americans
table.
all Yeah, Americans all over the world right now are thinking she wants them on a couch, on a settee, on a sofa. What is she talking? Massage table.
Yeah, and see if you say table over here, people are like, I'm laying on my dining table.
Right.
That sounds really uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah. So laying down on the kind of thing you might find in your massage therapist's office, just to yeah, cover that. Um, you should be comfortable, and I think it's really important that that part of why we tend to encourage people to lay down or to sit at least is because the more physically comfortable we can be, the easier it's going to be to then do whatever we need to do, and you get the bonus of that extra relaxation and some
Yeah.
quiet restful
And just from a
time.
technical point of view, if we can turn off the physical muscular system, it's easier to access the energetic system.
Yeah,
That's what it comes down
yeah,
to.
yeah. And generally no clothing needs to be removed. I mean, your shoes, usually your coat, but otherwise you can keep all your clothes on. We don't need it's not like a massage where you have to take some of your clothing off. And we may where we were talking about there be some physical touch, we may place our hands behind your head a little bit like a chiropractor might, but healers, unless they are also qualified chiropractors or osteopaths, won't be doing any of the neck cracking stuff
Mhm.
that people do with that. I know both Tiffany and I work sometimes just with a very little bit of gentle traction or acupressure points on some of the muscles, but that's again what Tiffany just said about helping switch off the physical kind of muscle tension can help to then get into that more energetic kind of layer. You'll often find, it's not compulsory, but you'll often find lower lighting, maybe some soft music, although I tend to ask my clients if they want music or not. But sometimes it can just help to screen out if there's any extraneous noise and just give you a nice experience if that's not going to be distracting for you. Having some blankets is good to make sure you don't get cold. Um, Generally, again, it might depend a little bit on exactly what you're coming for. It's okay if you want to just have a little bit of a chat, or to ask questions or talk about anything you're experiencing, or anything that's kind of coming up for you. But equally, you might just want to be quiet or fall asleep even. That's good too. And I always like to really reassure people that it's okay to move around to be comfortable. I think sometimes people worry, I've got to lay dead still and I can't move. If you need to scratch something, if you get cramp, if you get pins and needles, and equally, I think you should hopefully feel comfortable with your healer to ask if you need to change position, or you
Or an
need
extra
something
blanket.
else. Yeah, yeah,
It's amazing
yeah,
how hard that can be for people.
yeah, definitely.
I think what you said about the talking and not talking is really important. I have folks that come in, we have, we greet, we meet, we get shoes off, and they are silent 99% of their session. And that really works for them. And I have other people that walk in the door and they never stop talking. And sometimes
Hmm.
they're just updating me on what happened at their daughter's prom and the latest with the drama with the boyfriend, right? But sometimes they're asking questions about energy information or how that might relate to their life. And obviously, unlike Karen, I'm not a psychologist, so we're not getting into therapy. But they'll often ask for my energetic perspective on something, and I think, to be honest, I would find it really much more painful if everybody was like any of those categories. If everybody was in one of those any of those categories, if it was just one, that would be more difficult for me. But I love the variety. So different people come in and we have a different experience. And I think it really depends on what that person is most looking for.
You make a really good point, and actually something which I didn't mention in my previous list was whether or not to close your eyes. Sometimes
Hmm.
people ask, should I close my eyes? Some people just naturally close their eyes, and some people just naturally keep their eyes open. But if I'm asked, I would always say to people, it's really up to you. And for some people, closing their eyes makes them feel more comfortable because it shuts out some of the world and they can just concentrate on their own internal experience. For other people, closing their eyes would be more anxiety provoking, so it's harder to relax. And we're just all different. It really doesn't matter. And some people, flip between the two. They maybe have their eyes closed for a while, and then maybe they want to say something, so they open their eyes while they're speaking, or and it really doesn't matter what is always got to be number one priority is what will help you to feel most comfortable. And
Hmm.
any good healer or therapist of any kind, I think, really should be concerned with that as the priority. And if anything doesn't feel comfortable and okay, I mean, there may be things that happen with healing that may be uncomfortable in a way that, for example, if we're feeling into some sadness that we have stored in our bodies, then, that can be a little bit uncomfortable in the moment. But it should be all things that you feel okay about doing, I think, and as physically as comfortable as is absolutely possible for you to be.
Yeah, and do you know what we kind of alluded to but didn't say explicitly? I think because we just take it for granted so much. Is if you were watching us work, you would be seeing us walking around the person on the table, putting gentle resting like putting our hands in access points with gentle resting pressure, or as Karen said, some traction, or even some acupressure points occasionally. And so that's going to look like the knees, the feet, the hips, the shoulders, hovering over the torso, but just kind of gently moving around. I realized we didn't actually say that explicitly,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, it's not very exciting to watch.
no, it's kind of like watching paint. Yeah, if you can't
Yeah.
feel what's happening, it's kind of like watching paint dry.
Hmm.
Um, something else I think is important for people to think about is it's really important to have good access to healthcare that's not dependent upon sharing a belief system with your practitioner. So if you can imagine going to your GP or going to your dentist, or even your chiropractor for that matter, and feeling like you have to share their belief and their faith. And the same should be true for energy healing. Energy healing is a mechanism to increase your energetic health, and it's a healthcare treatment in the realm of healthcare, and to allow whatever faith or lack of faith that you have walking in the door does not have to be shared or believed in or agreed upon with the person. And really, in an ideal world, if that's something that you want to talk to the person about, that's fantastic, but you should never be asked to believe in something or be asked to stop believing in something that is not what you walked in the door with.
Yeah, I was just, what popped into my head then was the one thing that I do support people sometimes to change their beliefs about is negative feelings towards themselves.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, but that's not anything to do with your broader beliefs. Yeah, yeah. And I think it's really important to say that energy healing is a wonderful thing to receive. It can be a really great thing to have, even if you don't have any particular problems, every so often, just to take, like you might have a massage every so
Prevention.
often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or you might visit your chiropractor once or twice a year, or you go to the dentist for a checkup, even if you're not really concerned about anything. But it can also it generally sits very well alongside other treatments, other things that might fall into the complementary or alternative therapies kind of realm, but also absolutely medical treatments. And one thing that we haven't said yet as well is any healer who discourages you from taking or seeking help from a medical practitioner, I would be mindful of that, because there's actually some research that suggests that people, for example, who are needing cancer treatments, some of those treatments can be very necessary but very toxic for our bodies, and having some healing alongside that can be a really, really great thing to do. It doesn't have to be either or. And that's something we can enjoy the benefits of it alongside whatever else we want to be doing and what feels right for us to be doing.
Yeah, that should be a real, well, we're going to do another podcast on how to
Yeah,
choose
we
a
are.
healer, how to
Yeah.
discern one. It's a big red flag. Okay, so what does it feel like to receive healing, to receive energy healing? And for most people, not everybody's energetically sensitive. So most people are feeling the responses in their body to the energy, right? So the physical sensations that are going on in their body because of the changes that are happening in their energy. Some people are going to be experiencing the energy, but most people are going to be experiencing the physical sensations because of what the energy, how the energy is changing. And that tends to feel like a tingling sensation or warmth moving from one part of the body to the other part of the body. Sometimes, energy flows through pipes, the way that blood flows through pipes. And sometimes if those are constricted, you'll feel a kind of a presence, like a very soft pressure that will go and open up quickly when the energy starts to go through that. And I think the other thing I hear a lot is floating. A sense of
Mm.
floating and a sense of just a presence. But I do think those last two might be energetic sensations that energy sensitive feels. I'm curious if that's similar to what you hear from people, Karen. Oh, and
Yeah.
relax. That's the big thing I
Yeah.
hear from
Yes.
people.
Number one. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
relax, like a marshmallow, a melted marshmallow.
Yeah, and sometimes people will say things like, "I feel stuck to the couch," and
Mm,
get to the end of the session, they're like, "I don't know if I can move because I just feel melded in this really lovely
mhm.
way." I think the other thing that's quite common actually for people to experience is dropping into that state that's kind of that sort of liminal state that's between being awake and asleep. So people, sometimes people will be properly asleep. Sometimes people will be more, well, I was kind of aware of what was happening. I definitely wasn't asleep. But I was kind of half somewhere else as well. And I think many of us will be familiar with that state when we're just dropping off to sleep or when we're waking up. Two very common kind of times to be in that half awake, half asleep state. So that's really common. And I think that's often when people will describe the kind of floating or yeah, the actually one more thing popped into my head about what people often not uncommonly feel, and again different for everybody, is sometimes people will feel sensations in their body that aren't where our hands are. That's quite common, and I think in part that's your feeling energy working in an area of your body where we may not be currently kind of standing, partly because we're all one system that all connects up. Sometimes if we were somewhere and then we move on to another area of the body, it's like you can still feel it kind of working. And sometimes we might be working with a part of you via from another part of your body, if you like. So if we think about a chart that you might see in an acupuncturist's office of the meridian lines through which chi energy runs, you can see how if chi starts coming into the body from the feet, you could experience that anywhere else in the body because it's all connected. So I think that's another kind of common, and one that people are often surprised about, kind of like, oh, I feels like your hands are still at my head, even though you're now at my feet,
Mhm.
or vice versa. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that you can expect to feel is better. Right.
Yeah.
People that are coming for maintenance, when they walk in the door, they'll often say, "Oh, I feel great. Things are good, yada yada yada." And then they get off the table like, "Oh my God, I feel so much better." And
Yeah.
that's how you know that the timing of the maintenance appointment is accurate, because a little like, what's that expression about a slow cooking frog, or that whatever that brutal cooking thing is, where you don't even realize that you're just the wear and tear of your life is kind of slowly grinding you down, and you're basically fine. You're fine. But then you get your boost, you get that maintenance appointment. You're like, "Oh God, I feel so much better." Um, but then, of course, if you're not in maintenance and you're coming to actually solve a problem or improve a situation, then you should also have an expectation that you feel better fairly quickly, right? 3 to 4 sessions is what Karen and I both feel like there should be. You may not be finished yet, but there should be enough improvements to justify your time and budget to keep coming back.
Yeah, I have I've had experiences of that with people who maybe someone else bought them a voucher for a session. So they weren't necessarily, and I have occasionally like donated a session to a competition or something, and and then somebody shows up in your office who maybe wasn't particularly looking for an energy healer, and or maybe not right now, hadn't been thinking that was a kind of a priority or something maybe even they needed. And, often those people will sit down at the beginning of the session and, we might say, is there anything, you'd particularly like help with, anything going on that's causing a problem at the moment? And, they might say, no, that, things are pretty good. I came because my wife bought me this voucher, or my friend treated me for my birthday, or whatever. Um, there's nothing particularly. Life's busy, but I'm generally good. And then often those people at the end of the session will be like, oh my goodness, I feel so much better. And I didn't know, like Tiffany says, I didn't know that there was a problem. And it's not really that there was a problem, certainly not a big problem, but still, we hopefully you'll feel better than you when you came in.
Yeah. Okay. So what is it most useful for? When can energy healing, when is energy healing the branch of healthcare that you should be seeking out as opposed to all the other branches of healthcare? And I'm curious what you say for people for this, Karen, but what my standard response to that is that my work tends to be best for things that are either systemic or whack-a-mole. And by systemic, I mean that you can't quite point to it. It's kind of everywhere and
Mm.
nowhere at the same time, right? So if you have a slipped disc, it really shouldn't be your first point of call, right? I think the exceptions to that are migraines. Migraines are definitely helped by that. You can point specifically to your head. But so things that are systemic that you can't quite point to because they're everywhere are going to be things like sleep and stress and anxiety and hormonal issues. Things that's what I mean. Things that are just kind of everywhere. And whack-a-mole are things that, that game that you play, right? It's like, the little mole jumps up and you whack him on the head, but then he jumps up someplace else and you whack him on the head, right? People who have irritable bowel and then they fix that, $900 of supplements and 6 months later. And then now they've got anxiety and then they fix that and then it shows up as something else and it's just going back and forth and back and forth. And that's really happening when, again, symptoms are always emotional, mental, or physical, but the cause is very clearly in the energetic system, and that's not being dealt with. So the symptoms are just whack-a-moling and they're showing up in other places. And those tend to be the two things that I think of energy healing being good for.
Yeah, I think probably because I have a background as a therapist, as a psychologist, I often end up seeing people who have maybe tried talking therapies and kind of,
Yes.
it may well have been helpful, but they feel like maybe there's just something they haven't quite been able to get to. And I think energy healing can be really, really helpful with that. I mean, I think there's a big shift now in talking therapies, including a more somatic body experience, which is, so important. But I think energy work can really help us connect in with that stored energy in our bodies. And I know we're going to do other podcast episodes talking more about that. But really, I mean, I suppose it's similar to what you were saying about the systemic. I mean, I think one of the things I've learned over the years I've been doing this is how essential being able to properly relax is. And I think people are talking about it more now because there's a lot more research and conversation about the nervous system. But I think when I can remember really early on when I first started doing healing work more professionally, and I was talking to a colleague and I was like, I feel like I'm not really doing very much. I just, someone came in and just, they felt more relaxed, and this person I was talking to was kind of like, well, that's a huge thing for some people. And the longer I've been doing this work, the more I realize how many of us in this crazy world we live in spend most of our time, or at least good chunks of our time, in that fight or flight part of our nervous system. And I think energy healing is so good for helping us have a bit of a reset, helping us get back into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system which we don't have any direct control of. It happens kind of automatically which of those we switch between. But we can do things to support ourselves to be more in the parasympathetic. So that's commonly called the rest, digest, and heal part of our healing part of our nervous system. And the reason why it's so very important, I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, yeah, it's good to be able to relax. But so many of our other systems don't work well when we're not fully relaxed. So we know it has a big impact on our immune system, on our digestive system, on our ability to sleep, on our brain's ability to function properly, our ability to think and remember and pay attention, and all those kind of things. So for me, I think energy healing is so brilliant with anything that can be impacted by being in a state of stress, which sounds a bit vague and sounds a bit kind of, well, that it can help with anything. And, it can help with many things. Either sometimes it can help someone completely, sort out a problem they've been experiencing. Sometimes it might help a bit and something else is needed as well. And, I think that's okay and true of most kind of treatments or therapies or, whatever, medicines even. So I think those are the things that I would often talk to people about. That yeah, and actually the other bit that just comes to mind, I mean, I've had a number of clients over the years who have been in situations where, for example, they're waiting for a knee replacement. And whilst I don't personally believe that energy healing can cure a complete absence of cartilage in your knee. I think there's often a lot it can do to really support you when you're dealing with that, because that's usually an increasingly painful condition, and quite can become quite debilitating for people.
Mhm.
And I don't know how this works in America, but I know in this country, people are often encouraged to wait as long as they can manage before they get a knee replacement done, because they do have a lifespan and there's a limit to how many they can do. So people are often kind of suffering along with quite a lot of pain. So I think energy healing has a really important role in sometimes being able to help support the body to stop feeling pain or get rid of pain or things that cause pain, but also in just, kind of supporting when we're in pain. It can be a really great way to ease it or minimize the impact of it without, even if it's not able to 100% cure the thing that's causing the pain, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're so right about how people are talking about this more.
Mm,
I think not, 40, 30, 40 years ago, people started talking about the mind-body connection and how that
mhm.
was a revolutionary idea and it changed the way that people thought about their healthcare. And I think we're in a place now where we're talking about mind, body, and energy and the importance of looking and including the energetic anatomy and having that be a real aspect to maybe being the leading tip of the arrow for what's needed in a situation, or maybe just being a complementary associated to be the lubricant that makes the whole situation easier. Yeah. So I hope we've answered the question, what is energy healing and what's the value of it and what can you expect when you're doing it? Maybe hopefully we've given you some ideas about what it feels like and made you curious enough that you might want to try it out for yourself or somebody that you really care about. Definitely do your research. We're going to, if you are interested in finding out more about this, we're going to do a whole separate episode on how to choose and discern and evaluate the right healer for you. So definitely check that out as well.
Yeah, and I guess what we're essentially saying is most people are pretty clued up on, even if they're not always doing it, the things that are good to do to take care of our physical health. And there's increasing conversation about mental well-being, but we just kind of want to, fly the flag for find some things to do for your energy system as well, because that can often be a missing part of both our self-care and the care we seek from other people. And again, I think we can't underestimate the value of finding something that really helps us truly relax and be in our bodies and be in that part of our nervous system, which is really going to support all of our other systems to be as balanced and functioning as well as possible. And if you've never tried energy healing, give it a try and see whether that might be serve that function for you.
Yeah, I love the idea of flying the flag. And if any creatives out there, go make the flag and show it to us. I want to see what that flag looks like so we can all fly it together. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you later.
Great to have you join us. See you soon.
Hi, I'm Carol Smith, the producer of the Life Made Easier podcast. We hope today's episode gave you some meaningful tools and takeaways to help make your life feel a little lighter. You've reached the end of this episode, but not the end of the ways that you can support us. Please subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, follow us on social media, and check out our Patreon for extra content and ways you can go deeper with us. There's also a whole library of episodes waiting for you to help increase your energy intelligence. Take care, and we'll see you on the next Life Made Easier.